Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Hassan River Radio. Thank you for joining us today. Now, our topic for today is something that I didn't think was actually relevant at first to our podcast, given we generally talk about tech and business. But, I thought about it a little bit, and I realized maybe it is. And that topic being the upcoming Ramadan 2021 for Muslims. I figured a conversation about Ramadan 2021 would give us an opportunity to talk about calendars, which is definitely important for the business world, it's particularly global business, because not everyone is on the same calendar or using a calendar that's based on the solar calendar. And some of you will be doing business in countries that use a lunar calendar. A country like China, they actually use both, which is a whole nother conversation that I'm probably not the most qualified to have. But China actually uses both calendars very well, the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. Now, before I get into this Ramadan 2021, this is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. Before I do that, what I find is the reason why we can't understand the Islamic calendar or lunar calendars is because we don't understand our own calendar. So let's take a few minutes to just try to understand our own calendar for a minute. Now, the calendar we use here in the United States is the Gregorian calendar. And you can probably guess that was named after someone, that someone being Pope Gregory. He was the 13th, Pope Gregory the 13th. Now, you probably guessed he was a religious leader. So you're probably wondering, what will a religious leader, why would he even care about the calendar? But you would be surprised how much of a stickler religious people are for having accurate dates, because obviously they want to know there are significant dates with respect to religion that they want to have accurate dates for. That's just one example. But yes, the religious community are definitely sensitive to having accurate dates. So, but let's go before that, because it's also important to know, because he made some small corrections to the previous calendar that is the Julian calendar. And you can also probably guess that was also named after someone, that someone being the historical figure, Julius Caesar. Okay, so hopefully somewhere in your schooling, I know some of you did like AP World Geography in high school, or learned something in college. Julius Caesar, I hope, if you're an American, I hope you know a little bit about him, because he's had a tremendous influence on where the United States is right now. So I would learn a little bit about him. But for the purposes of this podcast, I guess a tad bit of history wouldn't hurt. So Julius Caesar was a person who eventually became the dictator of once was previously the Roman Republic. There was a civil war, and after all the chips fell, Julius Caesar emerged as the new dictator of Rome. And one of the things he did was to establish a calendar, which was actually a pretty nice calendar, to be honest. I mean, regardless of how you feel about dictators. So he had a pretty good measurement. It was a Julian calendar, is a solar calendar. The measurement basically was a year is 365.25 days. So that is the length, which is actually pretty good. So you have what they call leap years every 4 years. So every 4 years, in order to compensate, you add a year to a month, which ultimately adds a year to that year. So that way you're correcting for the fact that you have like a fractional number of days in the year. And that worked out pretty well. But by the time of Pope Gregory the 13th, they realized that their dates were a little bit off. So if the dates were a little bit off, when they're talking about things that happened to Jesus and et cetera, then those dates will be a little bit off as well. And religious people, like I said, they want their dates to be accurate. First, especially when you get into things like equinoxes and stuff like that. I mean, they want all that stuff to be accurate. So what they did was they did two things. One was we had to make a correction for the past. So basically what they did was they added 10 days, and this is 16th century. I want to say it's 1582, and you go Google it. Fortunately, I have some very smart listeners on my podcast. They know how to Google things. But I think it was 1582 when the Gregorian calendar was adopted. I think it was in October. I don't want to say it was October the 4th, and they added 10 days to what was then the current date, so they can make a correction for the dates that they lost in the past. So that was that. So then they said, okay, how do we compensate for future dates? So they said, all right, ever so often, when we usually have a leap year, that year won't be a leap year. Okay, so that's basically kind of what they did. And it doesn't happen very often. So when you have a year, that's what they call a century year, which basically, because naturally 100 is divisible by 4. So when you get to the century marks, when you would generally have a leap year, if it's divisible by 400, which only happens every so often, what would have naturally been a leap year is no longer a leap year. So that way, that's kind of their way to compensate. So they didn't make any serious changes to the Julian calendar, except for those two things. They corrected for the previous dates, and they made for corrections for the future. So that's our Gregorian calendar, and that's what we're using today. And it's based on, obviously, the sun and the earth revolving around the sun. Now, so that brings us to the lunar calendar. Now, if you know enough about prefixes and stuff like that, or root words, know about root words and stuff like that, you probably guessed that the lunar calendar is based on the moon. It's based on something called synodic months, which are months that are based on moon phases. And so this is, I guess, a different type of way of thinking about your months, and since months make up years, then that your years. So you have less days in a lunar year. You have 29 or 30 days in a lunar month. And that's what brings us to Ramadan 2021, because Ramadan can start on one of 2 days. Now, I know with the calendar we use, we like being able to look, months in advance and know, okay, that's Christmas, that's Thanksgiving, there's Labor Day. But when it comes to the dates based on the Islamic calendar, we can kind of sort of predict, but not really, because it really comes down to when your community is able to see the moon. Now, the good thing is it's only one of 2 days, so it's not going to be but so topsy-turvy. But what you'll see is Muslims trying to determine whether the month of Ramadan starts one day or another. And Ramadan does start at night, meaning that once you see the moon, that is the beginning of Ramadan. It's a little different than the whole, 12 a.m., that's when the next day is. It's a little different way of thinking about things. So once you see the moon, Ramadan starts. So then you're thinking, okay, well, one thing I do know about Ramadan is people don't eat. So they abstain from food and other pleasures the following day, during the daylight hours. That's the stuff that you may have heard about. So that's kind of how Ramadan works. It is one of the 5 pillars, and it's great that many schools are starting to teach the 5 pillars in their curriculums. Hopefully all schools will do that. I mean, it's just good to know certain things. You want to be able to know about the people you're going to be dealing with on a business basis. It's just good to know. Or you may manage a team that has people who are Muslim or any ethnicity or religious background. Really doesn't make a difference. I mean, you're going to want to know these things, because you're going to have a happier workforce, going to be more productive, et cetera. So the more you know, the more you can connect with the people that you're on your team or you're doing business with, the better. So I think that may iron out a lot of the details. I just add a couple more, and that is just the overall sighting of the moon. And what does that have to do with anything? So basically, the moon wanes until you can't see it with your naked eye. You won't be able to see it at all. And you don't have to be a Muslim to observe that. I mean, you can get an app that shows, and they got a website called Time and Date or something like that. They got really good sites out there that just shows how the moon wanes down to nothing, okay? And then it starts to wax. It starts to wax, which means it starts to get back. It tries to get back. It slowly gets back to that full moon status. So while we can't see it, we're looking for it until we can actually see a slither of it. And that's when we start in the month of Ramadan. Again, it starts at night because we see the moon at night. So that's what Muslims will be doing. And the way the earth and moon is set up, not everyone will see the moon on the same day, which is a whole nother phenomenon. So I know it's good for the United States, for everyone in the United States to be able to see the moon the same day. It's not entirely impossible for that to happen, but it's more likely that everyone in the United States won't see it the same day. So we have imams and community moonsiders and stuff that sort all that stuff out, how they're going to handle that. But from a physical standpoint, talking about science, not everyone, because of the size of the United States, is very likely not everyone's going to see it the same day. So what you may see as confusion in the Muslim community, it's not that. So I'm just trying to give you the foundation that a lot of them are working on, and some of them may not even try to. Well, I won't go into that. I may get into trouble for mentioning that. But it's going to be either one. It's going to be either one of 2 days. One of 2 days. So because it's going to be the previous month, which is also a lunar month, obviously, was also 29 or 30 days. So it's going to be one of 2 days. Then at the end of Ramadan, because Ramadan is either 29 or 30 days, we will be looking for the moon again because we'll be trying to determine when the beginning of the Eid Al Fitr is, okay? Because that's our celebration. It's 3 days before we start. We do our almsgiving. We look out for the poor the best we can. That's the almsgiving that is required. Then we go into our Eid prayer, which is generally in the morning, and then after that we spend the day exchanging gifts, friends and family, for that day and the 2 following. So 3 days of Eid Al Fitr. Okay. So I think, and I guess I should say this is one of 2 festivals that we have. We also have an Eid Al Adha, which comes later, and that comes at the end of the pilgrims, Muslim pilgrims that go to Mecca to make the pilgrimage in Mecca. I mean, if you've seen the movie X, that's what Malcolm X was doing when he was wrapping himself into the white, all that. I mean, it's, every Muslim who has the means tries to make that pilgrimage. And at the end, you have the Eid Al Adha. And then also, what we also associate with that is the willingness of the prophet Abraham, which is well-known prophet, to sacrifice one of his sons. I mean, for the obedience, in obedience to God. So that's part of the association with that as well. So I guess we'll be talking about that in a few months. But right now we're focused on Ramadan 2021. I just wanted to give you a backdrop of that so you get a sense of it. If you're a manager, you got employees who are Muslim. If you're a store owner and you're planning for the Eid so that you can connect with some, you can increase your customer base. That's one way of looking at it. If you're a teacher, you got Muslim students. All this stuff is relevant. This is just the type of economy that we live in. So knowing about calendars, it's relevant. Like I said, the Chinese, they use the lunar and the solar. And different people use different calendars, got different ethnicities, different languages, different religious observances. So we have to be mindful of all this. Otherwise, the tech and the business stuff is not going to make as much of an impact, if we can't connect with people on a certain level. Yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to Hassan River Radio. I appreciate your time. And we will be writing an article like we normally do. We do a podcast and we try to follow up with an article that's a little more detailed. And we'll let you know when that is. But yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. We will be in touch. Thank you. Peace.